Hey everyone, just coming to you with this public service announcement. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. First and foremost, it's free to do so. You don't got to come out of your pocket. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch of others platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's why I got on it. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, peace. Peace, everyone. We are here, live stream on YouTube, and I have with me a special guest of mine, a brother I've been known for a long time, goes by the name of Cozmo L, out of the Khalifa territory, and he is now in the lovely island of Hawaii. We're going to get into that conversation, but this is our second time having this conversation on YouTube, doing an interview, and it's always an honor and a pleasure, brother. Welcome once again, brother Cosmo L. Islam.
I rise high, giving praise to Allah, honor to my illustrious and illustrious forefathers, the honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Noble to Ali. I give honor to you, brother, for your platform. I give honor to all true and divine prophets. I greet my brothers and sisters in the humble words of peace,
Islam, Moor. And last time we spoke, I think the title of our conversation was Signs and Symbols. We spoke about your book, dealing with the Moabite key. Excellent book. And before we get into that, a lot of y'all probably already know about your history and everything. But for those who are new, just coming on and catching on, could you kind of give a background about yourself, your upbringing and just how you came into the teachings of Prophet Noble Ali, Islam?
I want to make sure that I extend my appreciation for the opportunity. I appreciate your works, your books, your literature, your videos. You're one of the few Moors that, keep it just on a scholastic and a positive level and don't get caught up in the folly of fitness, so to speak. So honors to you for that. As far as my upbringing, to try to condense it, I came into the Moorish Divine and National movement, though at that time it wasn't a temple, around 14 years old. I was on a journey at this age, for real. I'm not going to go into all of the reasons why, but for whatever reason, I was on a search for spirituality. And being into hip-hop music, being from Long Beach, California, and MCing and things like that, it caused me to look deeper into words, and as I began to use dictionaries and thesauruses for finding words to rap, basically, I started getting into words, basically, vocabulary. And so in hip-hop music around that time, it was filled with speeches of like Malcolm X, Farrakhan, and people of knowledge. You had MCs like KRS-One, you had Rakim, and people who actually had knowledge. And so when as a rapper, I would study other rappers, and when I would hear what they would say, some of it would interest me, and I would begin to look it up. That led me to the path of quote unquote Black consciousness, or studying what back then, what was, the study itself. And then it also led me down the path of studying Islam, because of the Islamic overtones in hip hop at that time. And so in doing so, I began to seek out Islam, and in seeking out the knowledge of Islam and becoming an avid Muslim, I came across the teachings of Noble Jew Ali. Now, being a young Muslim, coming into the various masjids and other Islamic cultural functions, it always intrigued me how, even though it's a universal brotherhood, it was still segregated. Now, when I say segregated, I don't mean necessarily in a bad way. I mean, when you would go to the mosque on special occasions, obviously nationalities begin to group with their nationality group, and you see them practicing their customs, and you start to feel a little left out, like, well, hey, where are my customs? I'm new to all of this. And so once I came across the knowledge of Noble Jew Ali and referring to ourselves as Moors, again, being studious, I began to look up this word Moor. And when I looked it up, it enabled me to see myself in Islam. Moors look a particular way. When you look at the pictures, Moors tied their turbans a certain way. Moors wore certain types of dress, and they wore fezzes, and there was culture. And so I immediately, after all this time, wondering where we fit into Islam and what was our history, found it by studying the teachings of Noble Jew Ali. And so at that time, I hooked up with organizing in the city at that time, and I began to study. We had a study circle, and that study circle consisted of memorization techniques, similar to 5%. We had to memorize our lessons, which is ancient Greek science, which has been handed down, which is related to hip hop, which is another story. But I began to memorize things like nationality card, constitution and bylaws, our 101s, and then after that, lessons. And so after having these lessons, memorizing, and when people begin to ask questions, the lessons just naturally begin to come out of you, And even though some of it is repeating, after repeating for a while, then, you kind of get into a rhythm of being able to speak to people about the subject. Again, being studious, continuing to study, and I had an opportunity to finally get off the front line of organizing with Moors. I began to look back into myself, and so I began to write more. Actually, I should say, I began to pick up old manuscripts that I had already started, but because being on the front line, didn't have an opportunity to finish. So some of the first works were still like Ancient Kemet Islam had still kind of been sitting on the desk for like 20 years before it actually got published. And when the internet came about, getting online and being able to associate with other Moors and talk to other Moors in different regions, we began to share knowledge, and I started to see that there was a lot of division over certain subjects. And so I decided to, not just within the Moorish community, but the fact of, are we Moors, and having to defend this term. Oh, they're having an event over there at the beach for a protest.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what they're protesting all the way, but I'll find out. This is kind of what brought me to the path, and I started to begin to write and try to give information on some of the questions that Moors face. And one of the main ones being Murder Moor. That book, Murder Moor, expressing, going into the etymology, semantics, morphology, so on and so forth of the word Moor. Can you still hear me? I know it's getting a little loud over there.
I can hear you, brother. And I just want to let you know,
The Moors are on. The Moors are definitely on, and they're checking in. However, due to Zoom, is being funny, and what's happening is this, brother. On the YouTube stream, they can hear you because I have the phone up, but they can't see you.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's totally, they don't need to see me.
Okay. Praise Allah. Praise Allah. We're going to have this conversation. And what I'm doing right now, brother, is I'm actually recording in the Zoom. So I might be able to show you, because you got on the royal garb, Moor. You got on your purple turban, your purple robe, and I would love people to see you. But they're still going to get the information regardless. So we're going to...
There are no happiness, beloved, you know.
Absolutely.
So praise Allah. This is exactly how Allah wanted to be. They just have to hear the breath and resonate with that, inshallah.
Yes, sir. Praise Allah. Absolutely. But
so I'll leave it there, and you know, can go further into some of the things that I was headed with some of the next questions.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So you spoke about you felt the need. You saw the need to put out information to correct some of the misunderstandings that were out there going on with the movement, within and without the movement, and that resonates with me because as an author, as a fellow author, I saw certain subject matters that wasn't being addressed. And I want to give you honor because you've written so many books, and in each of those books, you touch on some very key, important things, just that aspect of the Moor to Moor. I've seen your demonstrations, counteracting the narratives that says Moor means black when we know it doesn't. So honest to you on that. As an author, and as a Moorish American Muslim, how important is it to put out these books? Like in your words, what keeps you going in terms of writing? Because I see you always putting out works, and we're going to get into your latest work, Higher Self and Lower Self, Keys from the Questionnaire. What is it that keeps you going to put out this information?
Islam, I guess being in a high visibility type situation, whether it be online or demonstrating, there are certain questions that come across my desk in high frequency. And I find myself answering them over and over and over again. And so when I get subject matter like that, then what I realize is that there's a need and that those who don't have access to me to get my portion, of the understanding, but yet they still are seeking that knowledge. Also, Noble Ali told us we need to change the literature. And there's it always surprised me that most of the people in the so-called Black consciousness movement, at least, at the time when I was growing up, and even today, even though not so much so today, had never even heard of the word Moor, but yet it's in almost every major so-called Black history book. Even to the point where even El Hajj Shabazz talks about the word Moor. And, once you start looking at it, you say, well, if this has been addressed so much, why is it so unknown? And then you begin to realize that it's by design. And as Moorish Americans, there's nobody that's going to actually address these issues unless we address them. I know that the information on Moors has been suppressed. Growing up, I've been president of Black Student Union, president of Pan-African Student Union, all the while being a Moor and trying to introduce these concepts into the curriculum and into the mind, and have been met with constant opposition until more recently, when the internet had picked up and now the information is everywhere. And so now you have a bunch of people who know the word Moor and know Moorish American and can glean some knowledge and wisdom from what they see online, but yet are left to put the rest of the pieces together for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes incumbent upon us to now write and propagate the faith, and propagate the message, because to this day, regardless of all the different Moorish spin-off groups and all the different twists that everybody puts on things, the crucial solution that faces so-called Black people is still identity, and it's still being in a quote-unquote denationalized state, not knowing that one is even entitled to a nationality, be it human rights and inalienable rights and so on, and divine rights, not knowing that they are at a disadvantage by not having a nationality that they can call their own. And then even within the Moorish American community, knowing that, hey, just because you're a Moor, that doesn't mean didn't squat. Your mother and father are responsible for you being born. They put in the work, not you. So the only thing that you can do to make it significant is to make your parents proud and to put pride on that name. And you get that by being involved with your society and your nation, and fulfilling the responsibilities that come along with the rights. Everybody wants the rights, but they don't want the responsibility. And so these are the things that we have to not only heal within our community, Moorish American community, but also get the greater of us to see that we have to leave what I call plantation psychology and culture alone and return to our ancient forefathers' divine way of thinking, so that we can actually be at peace on this earth.
Absolutely. Islam. I agree with that. Yeah, and you're definitely doing it with the work that you're doing. I want to get into your latest work. This book right here, Higher Self and Lower Self, Keys from the Questionnaire. And I want to ask you just off, because I noticed that this particular book is all Moorish Science. Everything you've written is Moorish Science, but I see, at least for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you went a lot, you delve into the spiritual aspects pretty deep in this one. What was your inspiration for this book, writing this?
Islam. Actually, in taking on the responsibility of what Sister Janelle left here with the Moorish Science Temple of America, California, Inc., and then with us forming the new Oakland #1 temple under the Prophet, then again, high frequency questions in that particular setting of raising the meeting. And so, number one, I wanted to kind of create something that someone who walked into the temple who haven't been there for a year or 6 months could have something to kind of get caught up quickly on what the major aspects of the Moorish Science is about. And then also, being a minister of culture and falling into, going into that role and fulfilling that role, just dealing with the culture for so long, I was ready to, and I did that for a reason, because it was less conflict there. Because the moment you start talking about spirituality, everybody has an opinion on what they think, this and that and that. So I went heavy into the culture and into the history and the language first, so that when I speak upon these things, one will know that it's coming from a direction of one who has studied and one who has actually dealt, and not only just writing about this, but have demonstrated it in reality and life, and also have, kind of just waited until a lot of people put their drawing out there and just say, hey, here's something that's universal for all Moors, no matter what body you belong to. You should be able to get something out of this book. And if you're not in the Moorish Science Temple of America and the concepts are foreign to you, that you can grasp a good understanding of what it is that we're about spiritually, from a spiritual point of view, and in hopes that will combat a lot of the negative press that comes with those that are out there doing crime in the name of Moorish Americans, those out there that are doing things that bring a bad light on the Moorish Americans. So when someone says, well, what do Moorish Americans really believe spiritually? Where do they get their spiritual life from? Anybody can have access to it. It doesn't mean that they're being made sheiks or ADAPs or anything like that, but it gives them some insight as to what the character should be of the Moor and what we're really about, as opposed to just hearing that there's a bunch of crime going on and that we're just with the adverse possessions and sovereign citizen and all of these other things, because at the end of the day, our religion is Islamism, and that's an official religion that is recognized not only here but all around the world. And people need to, even if they don't decide to practice, become more familiar with the precepts that really drive the divine and national movement.
Islam said perfectly. And you definitely did that when you addressed the principles in the book. And for all those, just want to make note, everybody, if you haven't gotten the book, go get it. Amazon, I'm going to put the link in the description. Excellent read. It's very easy read, but very, packed with jewels in it. I want to speak, before we dive into the book, you mentioned our beloved sister who made a transition, Sister Janelle Ill. I really want to take time to, reflect on her, give her her due honor, because it was because of her that you and I met through the Moorish Unity Summit some years ago. So, I can say from my experience, and I only had a short time being around her, that her spirit, she had such love for Moor, she had such love for the Prophet, and she was a small statured woman, but she was great in spirit, and the work that she did, like I can't name too many people in the movement that was able to do what she's done, to be quite honest. And I know you're continuing that work. What does she mean to you?
Islam, I always say I had two grand sheiks, or one grand sheik, one grand sheik. One, Daniq Hussain Kareem Bey, who a very pioneer in the Moorish movement in California, and then Sister Janelle English Hill. They're almost like the masculine and the feminine, because I learned the lessons and the science, but once I got to dealing with the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life, and you know what I mean, her strength, she had to battle, go to battle in a sense. Every time we talked, there was always some grand sheik trying to come down on her and tell her she couldn't do the things that she was doing, and in helping to co-found the Moorish Unity Summit, bringing all of those bodies together in this time, she even had a plan that she wrote, a provisional plan to a Moorish government to bring everyone together. I think she's very underrated in the movement. There's not many grand sheikesses that have not only did what she did, but have stood firm in the face of a lot of pressure.
Right.
And like you said, it's because of you, because of her that you and I met. I met a lot of Moors through her. Grand Sheik A. Hopkins Bey and his family. So many other Moors that are positive examples in the movement. And so, I definitely want to give honor to her for that. I know I cut it short with naming names, but I just, those people who they are, they know who they are.
Islam.
And, we just need to continue on her work. What they did by forming the oldest Moorish American institution of charity, which is a 501c3, it's an auxiliary organization of the temple. And what it allows Moors to do is to be able to, this charity was founded in 1974. So I like to tell Moors a lot of things that were done. Some of the things that were done and are just being done in the year 2000 with all of these proclamations and things was done in the 80s here in California by the elders of Temple 17, which Sister Janelle Ill was a member of. So she left a monumental institution here for us, and that's what she means to me. She's a pioneer in the movement here, and I think a lot of times, you know, they say that it's a boys' club, that Moorish Science and the Moorish Science Temple is a boys' club, and she's proved that is not the case. It's just, do you want to step up and face the type of pressure that you face and continue to carry on the movement?
Islam, definitely. Honest to her. Yeah, definitely high honors to her. I also want to extend honors to another group. I'm saying some Moors that you and I both know mutually. My Sheikh brother, Asar Bey, my Sheikah sister, Melanie Bey, that are out there in California now. That's family right there. Another great example of great Moors. It's a beautiful thing when like-minded Moors, you know, those who are truly working progressively in this movement come together, and it's just linked. Like, it's just so many links between me and you on that level. So that lets you know law governs all events. Absolutely. So with that, I want to get into your book. I want to start off with the beginning, because in the beginning, you started off speaking on the star, the origin of the 5-pointed star, and the Seba symbol. So, two-part question is, one, what is the Seba star, as you expound on it, the Seba symbol, and why did you begin with speaking on the star first? Like, what, when you was addressing this topic of higher self, lower self?
Islam. You know, the 5-pointed star is an ancient symbol. It is the hallmark symbol of the Moorish Americans, other than the circle 7. The Moorish flag, and with the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center, has even become almost acceptable by those who are not Moors. You know, they're beginning to understand, almost like the red, black, and green flag, that, hey, there's something about this flag, there's power to this symbol. And, you know, when you see that flag, you just think Moor. So I wanted people to have some knowledge on that particular symbol. I didn't delve off too deep into it. Like you said, it's an easy read. I write for those who don't know anything about the subject. Some people get my books and they want to go into some deep, heavy science. And what I'm writing may be in a more elementary structure. But at the same time, you know, keeping it simple, a lot of times it makes it more of a resource book, you know, because you don't have to delve in between volumes of things to find something that you read. You can kind of come back to it and have staying power in your mind if you're trying to consume the knowledge. And so, it being the hallmark of the Moorish American flag, I decided to, you know, deal with that subject. And you have a phrase where sisters, they call each other sea star. You know, you'll see that it was a little bit more popular. You don't see it too much anymore, but they would say sea star instead of sister, you know. And when you look at the 5-pointed star in Egypt, or ancient Kemet, ancient Timuri, the 5-pointed star symbol is actually derived from the starfish. You know, people would maybe think that symbol is derived from something in the sky, but it's actually not. It's derived from the starfish, with this mostly 5 equal points sticking out. Now, when you study the starfish, it's similar to what you go through in the womb. You know, you begin to stretch out in 5 limbs, ourselves, inside the primordial waters in the womb, right? Which is the sea. And when we are born in this shape, then we're born and we have a shape similar to the sea star. So out of the sea star comes this sea star, this walking sea star. If you look, mostly everything that's in the heavens is round. So why is the star with these 5 spokes? And so when the ancient Kemetic, they had a term for this 5-pointed star, and it was the Shepherd star. And it was a symbol of discipline and learning. And so I thought, well, what better symbol that represents discipline and learning than the starfish of the Red Sea? Now, we have a phrase also, as above, so below. And so now this star symbol begins to be, as it's related to discipline and learning, begins to be raised to the heavens, right? And so it begins to take on a spiritual connotation. Our principles that are attached to it are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. But you'll find throughout the history of mankind, there have been various principles that have been attached to it. I believe it was around 300 BC when the Judaism began to use it as a stamp for Jerusalem. It was connected with love, wisdom, and beauty. And as many geometrical forms, mean different things to other people. Right. And so this was kind of my thinking in going into it. And then there are variations on this star. So I see Moors sometimes, and other people use the star, put it in a circle, put it in a pyramid, and they may not know what that symbol already exists. They may just be being creative. So I decided to do some of the variations on the star. Our particular star, the one that is in the flag, it is, so we know the original Moorish flag was red flag. And we know that the green star was added later to differentiate between naval power. But it was added by the bloodline, and it was added because it was a symbol of the ancient ones who that land belonged to, right? Right. And so referred to as the seal of Solomon. Exactly. And so it was put on there in honor of our ancient forefathers, because our ancient forefathers were the one who actually ruled that land, whether you want to call them Phoenician or Canaanites or Mari, whatever word you want to use. That's why that star was put on that flag. And when you read the proclamation of when it was put on in 1915, it goes into that, the seal of Solomon. So Solomon is that star is a geometrical, it's a miracle geometrical symbol. All right. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make sure. And sorry, getting into my electronics. Okay. So it's a miracle geometrical symbol, and that number one is created with one line. Right. Right. You can draw that star with one line, and you can make it. Right. And yet, when in doing that, you're creating a pentagram and 5 triangles. 5, you reduce it, it all comes back to 1. Each edge of that star contains the golden ratio. Yeah. And all the corners contain the golden ratio. This is the perfect, what some might call the Fibonacci spiral, or whatever. It's the perfect, it's the perfect symbol of beauty and balance in nature. Yes. And all in this symbol right here. And so, but not only that, it's an open star, meaning it's not closed in, it's not filled in. And so this star has become to me represent spiritual freedom, right? Not being closed in. When you get that closed in star, now you're dealing with man with this earthly limitation. Yes. And so Nova Duality teaches about the 5 principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Now, these are he says it's the 5 highest principles known to man. And so, again, I go into the book of how it's associated with the man and how it represents the number 5 in the temple of Edfu in Tamori. And so, all of this is this symbol. So, when we look at it, it's really a symbol of perfect man, which goes back to what it is we're here to achieve on this earth plane, is to build that temple of perfected man, which we know is in Solomon. right?
Right.
And we do these higher principles. So again, giving people some insight into what that means. Now, when you turn that star upside down, you're reversing those principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And now you're dealing with hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. And then when you place it in a circle, now you encompass it. So what was life is now becomes death. And so you'll see in this quote unquote witchcraft, they have the star upside down with the circle around it. Now, in their symbology, it may mean a particular thing, but to us, that symbolizes the reversing of the principles and the encompassing of spirit man and putting him in a dead-like state. And so just wanting to go into the variations because we might say, oh, this is our symbol and just start using it. But there's other connotations to it when you begin to add on and take away. But at the end of the day, it's a symbol for perfect man. And that seal of Solomon connects it on a real deep level with Moorish science because see, Solomon built Solomon's temple. And Solomon's temple was built with what? It wasn't built with bricks or stone. So it wasn't built with masons. It was built with carpentry. And so, and as a Moorish scientist, we're all carpenter's sons because we study the tools of the carpenter, right?
Yes.
Which and that goes into the tools that we use to build the temple of perfected man and to ascend from our lower selves into our higher selves. Which we'll obviously go into later on, but those are some of the gems related to our sacred symbols.
Absolutely.
They go to Venus. I know a lot of people go into Venus and it being the woman and so on and so forth. All of this is true. It's associated with Friday, which the color green, which is copper, which is related to the planet Venus, and so all of those things are true as well. But it represents a lot more. Because a lot of times people emphasize the bloodline, and that bloodline aspect is there, but there's also that divine aspect, which is what I highlight in this book.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love how you spoke on that because the symbol is so multi-layered in terms of, as you mentioned, being able to interpret it and see a symbol, the meaning behind it. And I like that you actually answered a couple of questions that I was about to ask about the open star versus the closed star that you get into it in your chapters. Before we move on later into the book, I just want to add on, or I should say, ask you a question, because you mentioned about the star being placed on the flag. Now, we all are familiar, those of us in the movement, are familiar with that picture. Where the prophet is sitting in the office and the flag is upside down. And you always hear Moors about, well, because flag upside down means in distress. So would it be also safe to say that there's also a spiritual aspect to that as well that was being demonstrated with that flag?
Islam, indeed. A lot of controversy around that picture,
Right.
And I like to tell Moors, like even which way the flag should be, and one Moor sees it this way, one Moor sees it that way. Interesting thing about those flags is that they're in front of a window, which we know, right?
Right.
And you can see it one way from the outside.
Yes.
And another way when you're on the inside.
Exactly.
So which way is it supposed to be? You see it one way on the outside, you see it another way on the inside.
Exactly.
You step in that temple, you stepping into your jurisdiction, and it being upside down is, like you said, in flag law, it is a symbol of distress. Yes. And then also on a spiritual level, that man in his lower self, our people are trapped in the lower self. You listen to our music, you listen to, and it's full of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything at heart. And it's celebrated,
Yes.
And so not only are we distressed as a nation, but we're distressed spiritually. And this is apparent on the 101s with them carrying the woman,
Yes.
humanity with the little baby bump,
Right.
So that's a very important symbol. And it's a very important statement. And, you know, politically, there were a lot of things going on at that time where, you know, things changed, and those who were claiming to represent that symbol were not representing that symbol properly, which is why it was in distress.
Yeah.
And that's why we had to rescue it, you know. We know that it was adopted, right? So that means that it existed already.
Right.
You know,
yes.
It just was adopted, because even though it was put onto that flag, that star symbol goes all the way back, and it's related, by them relating it to the Seal of Solomon, they're showing you who it belongs to right there.
Exactly.
You know, and they're giving a homage to the founders of that land, because they're just the custodians of it, right?
Right.
And so when you're a custodian of something, then you have to give homage to those who originated it at first. You know, we were taken, many of us taken out of that land, and so, and then first people have to even understand that when we talk about Moabite and Moab, you know, the first thing they think is they go to the Middle East, but there's an ancient migration that took place. That landed these ancient Moabites, Canaanites, and others in that part of the world right there, you know.
Yeah.
And so many of us were taken out of that land. We know that many of us were not. Many of us were here. Noble Drew Ali, he joined the broken wires, right? Because he had Moors on this side and Moors on that side. So when you have some Moors argue, you know, the red flag is the real flag, and the green star flag is not the one, but we have to know what whose symbol that is, where did it originate, and why it was even placed on that.
Exactly.
And then who became the custodian of that flag, right?
Yes.
Even though it was adopted in 1915, there still was no independence in that land until 1956.
Yep.
So you think, well, what does that mean? Well, there's an article in the Toledo Blaze in the 1930s where it talks about the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, and it talks about a prince who got in trouble for carrying a firearm in Spain, and he said he worked for the Moorish Holy Temple of Science in the 1930s. So why is a Moroccan prince working for the Moorish Holy Temple of Science? Because there was something over here that there was a jurisdiction over here.
Yes.
And that's why you look at Godfather, you see all those Moors coming in pheasants at a certain point to slow it down. You know, they put it in these movies.
Yeah.
But so that flag was represented over here up until 1956. You know, well after the Prophet.
Yes.
And now, even when you look at that flag, it's still not the same star. It's been changed a little bit. Sometimes it has a black border, and other times it has that spiral in it, which ours is just a straight flag. So we still rocking the original flag in the Seal of Solomon, which again ties it to Solomon's temple, which ties it to the work of the carpenter.
Right, absolutely. And I always tell people, you know, when they get into that conversation, like the testament of one of the testaments of Prophet Noble Drew Ali's of his prophethood is just the very fact that he could have the flag, like you said, it was adopted in 1915, and Morocco didn't get their independence until 1956, where they could fly it over there. But yet our prophet had it here in America, flying it, you know, proud with no hassle. You see what I'm saying? So there's much to be said about that. Absolutely. I want to get into the part in your book, and I'm just going to read it about the self. And let me go ahead here and just pull it up. Yeah, this is the section on the self. I'm just going to read it here. It says, the self. The subject of the self is one of antiquity. From time immemorial and throughout various civilizations, the contemplation of the self has resulted in a myriad of explanations, theories, and extrapolations regarding the self. Likewise, these same civilizations have sought to deeply know and understand the self, but what is the self? It is said that the phrase "man know thyself" was written above the entrance of all Tamori temples, which were used as places of higher learning. Then you have a series of writings, one of which is one of my favorite. What the underdeveloped man seeks is outside. What the advanced man seeks is within, and that's from Confucius. And then you go into the higher self and lower self. So with that said, can you expound on the science of self and the importance of us studying not only our higher self, but our lower self?
It's, many people think when they look in the mirror, they're looking at themselves,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when I say many people, I mean, it may sound strange to those people who have knowledge of the higher self and the lower self and the self, but there are many people that look in the mirror and they see themselves, and that's what they consider to be the self.
Mm-hmm.
I made a point to go into what the self is, and by illustrating, by dealing with one of the sciences of the self known as psychology, or the science of self, which dates back to the phrase "know thyself," right? Which is written on the pyramids. And so when dealing with the science of self is the science of the mind, right? And so when you're dealing with the mind, you're dealing with the immaterial thing. You're dealing with the thing that the mind deals with character and behaviors. So yourself is a culmination of your thoughts, which culminate in your character and your behavior, or your personality. Your personality is your true self. And so this is an immaterial thing. You cannot see this self, right?
Right.
You can only see the expressions of this self.
Yeah.
Anger, love, hatred, lewdness. So why it looks like some rain is coming in, so I'm gonna move along and take cover while I'm talking to you.
Okay, brother. Absolutely.
So we're dealing with a thing that is immaterial.
Yes.
You can't see until it's expressed. And the way that it's expressed is through one's personality.
Right.
So when I'm looking at a person, I'm not looking at they may have a beautiful form, they may have a lot of money, they may have other external attributes, but in order to really understand who and what that person is, I have to understand their self, which is their personality.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but in order for a person to understand themselves, they must understand themselves. In order to be able to, why is it important to know ourselves? Is so that we can self-develop. There are qualities that we either inherit or that we learn from our parents that are not good qualities that we need to self-develop out of,
Right.
Some of these qualities we don't learn from our parents. Our parents may have taught us right, but we learn it from society. And then it becomes necessary for us to self-develop. And so in order for one to be able to even begin to get on the path of self-development, they have to know themselves.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means knowing yourself, knowing your positive attributes and your negative attributes, right?
Yeah.
Your positive attributes are the attributes that you want to foster, that you want to continue to grow. And the negative attributes or behaviors and motivations of you are the ones that you want to self-develop out of. One cannot self-develop out of the negative traits. And what is a negative trait? A negative trait is an expression that affects people in a negative way.
Right.
Sometimes, I want to be careful in saying that, because sometimes you can do good and affect a negative person in a negative way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the useless, ungainly parts of our character and naughty parts of our character that need to either be cut off,
yeah,
or encompassed,
Yeah.
So the self is that inner person, that one that you often may have conversation with back and forth, that brings us to the higher self and the lower self. We have a self, but that self, we have actually two selves, right?
Yeah.
And you can even say one self composed of two selves, so to speak. And so the positive and the negative attributes. These negative attributes are usually born of negative emotions and or desires or passions.
Right.
And so, what's a negative passion? Well, here's this man, he has his wife over here, his wife is beautiful, and now I want his wife, so I'm going to do something to try to get his wife from him,
Mm-hmm.
I let my passions and my desires for this person violate a sacred bond.
Right.
That's negative. Not only is the negative attributes affect individuals, but they also affect societies.
Yeah.
Like in the example of a pedophile,
Right.
who ruins a child from the beginning or causes so much distress to a child and to family and ultimately to the society. Say if that child begin to act out and take out his rage on society for not being protected. So it's very important to self-develop because we're looking to have a society of peace. A society of peace can only be brought about by the cultivation of the higher self and people deciding to put their individual passions and desires aside for the greater good of an overall society.
Yeah.
This is not an easy thing. You have to develop willpower in order to do this because the carnal self, which affects the thinking, affects the psychology, is some of the strongest impulses that we have because they're connected to our very living and our very survival. We must procreate. We must eat. So
Yeah.
these things are strong for a reason, but they're not meant to overcome us. And what happens is because they're so strong, and we don't know that we have this higher self and this lower self, and that we need to keep that lower self in check, then they begin to rule us. And so
Yes.
now we have to eat every time we're hungry, or every time we see a woman, we get excited and
Right.
over hypersexual and whatnot.
Right.
And these come from not cultivating the higher attributes in us and allowing the negative attributes to run rampant.
Yes.
The carnal self has a place. It's not that we want to say that the lower self has no place, because the
Mm-hmm.
carnal self is just a body of desires. It's not in bones to think, nor in flesh to reason, right?
Absolutely.
So, but we have to make sure that we're not governed by these impulses and that we govern these impulses. Otherwise, it leads us into situations that are often negative.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say in relationship to the self, and just briefly going into the higher self and lower self a little bit, and how it can affect not only one's quality of a peaceful and happy life, but also other individuals and ultimately a whole society, which is what we're suffering from, which is why our star is in distress, because our community
Right.
is under the oppression of an upside down society that moves with that upside down star.
Yeah. Absolutely, Islam. And I like how you spoke on that in context to the society. I know, and I'm sure you're from Oakland. Well, you're originally from Long Beach, right, Mo?
Yes, sir.
But I know you was doing your work in Oakland. And I'm in Durham myself, originally from New York. And I know we all have had the conversations with our Asiatic brothers and sisters about what they use the term, quote, black on black violence, unquote. And how, the violence against our people, the young people, the gangs and stuff like that. And, there's many different conversations on how this should be solved. But I think, to your point, one of the main things that we don't speak about is the aspect that we want a peaceful society. We have to address the aspect of self-development especially within our all people of all ages, but definitely within our young people, as well as the willpower to kind of instill that, because when you get to a point where there's no conflict resolution, you know what I'm saying? Where the first thing to go up, because of the lower self, the first thing, like, what does the lower self read? hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, death, and everything that harms. So you get to the first thing, oh, he said this about me, oh, let me get my gun. As opposed to getting out of that vibration of the lower self and being able to study self in the self-examination. So definitely to what you were saying, absolutely is on point.
Wow, it's what I call impulse nature.
Yes.
There's impulse nature, and if one is not taught how to deal with this impulse nature, then what happens is one just begins to act and go with that first inclination. But you have to think before you act. We have to. So we definitely need to address that within our youth, but also provide them with the type of conflict resolution and so far as counseling and things of that nature. When things do get to that point where it looks like there's going to be some conflict, that's where the temples and the auxiliary institutions come in by making it known to our people that, hey, we have a society that exists that can address these issues.
Yes.
I feel fine as people begin to realize that, hey, Moors are not a bunch of rebel rousers and criminals, or how they try to portray us in the news. Once they really realize the science that we have and the science that we're using to develop our communities, they'll begin to seek to benefit from that. Yes. And seek to help heal some of the situations, because we have the answer. The answer is proven on a lot of levels. And I know you have these Moors out there. I have people come tell me, oh, this Moor did this and they acted this way and that way. Everyone's growing and everyone's at different levels, but Moors have to get it through their head that when you put on this fez and when you put on these guards now, you have everybody running around calling themselves noble. You have to actually be noble. Yes. If you want the response of a noble.
Absolutely.
You can call yourself noble all day, but if you're running around still practicing Negro, Black, and colored culture, it's not just one thing to call yourself a Moor. You have to practice your customs and your traditions.
Yes.
These customs and traditions are usually things that are even that are all geared towards self-development, the betterment of humanity. But when we just say, hey, I'm a Moor and I'm gonna do everything that the Negro, Black, and colored do, ain't nobody stupid. And you just putting yourself right back into the situation that you came. Noble character, nobility is not something that you're born with. It may come from that bloodline, but ultimately it's about your actions and your deeds that determine whether or not you're noble.
Yes.
And so the movement has placed a lot of emphasis on nationality and nobility and rights just for the sake of having a bloodline. But those rights have never just been for the sake of having a bloodline, because there's a higher order that doesn't come with the genealogy,
Absolutely.
The fight is everlasting.
Absolutely.
And that is what is going to remain in the end.
Yes, absolutely. Like you said, I like what you spoke about with the higher self and Allah not having a nationality like you said, it's higher than that. It brings back to my mind a conversation that my Supreme Grand Governor, who also passed, Jerome Graham Bay, he asked a master question one time in Baltimore. He asked the Moor, what is the nationality of Allah? And I immediately got it. I understood what he was saying. He was understanding that nationality is important, but it will only take you, it has its place within the plane of manifest.
That's loud.
You know what I'm saying? When you're dealing with the spirit plane, it's a whole nother thing. So
it's the land, in the land of fleshless things, it has no bearing. I mean, unless
yes.
It's in high principles that come from your forefathers or something like that. But that I like the way he said that, because not only nationality, but a lot of times, which I touch on in the book, gender.
Right.
There's a lot of male or female.
Yeah, exactly.
Spirits don't have gender.
Yes.
souls aren't even engendered, even though we refer to it as a her. That's a linguistic thing. Just like we refer to Allah as a he, that's because the word has a masculine designation in the language. But you only have a gender when you become embodied, and then there's rules in nature that go with that gender.
Right.
When I have a lot of, not a lot, but there are brothers and sisters that come into the temple, and one of the main questions is, well, is Allah he, or is Allah she, and right there they're at a dichotomy of, they're on that yin and yang, they're on opposite spectrums. And even in these relationships, you have, well, who's going to run, the male or the female? Well, spirits don't have no gender. Evil is evil. It's not some such thing as masculine evil and feminine evil. So ultimately, we're all going to be judged for our actions and deeds and our character. Our gender isn't going to play a role. Our nationality may play a role in the nation as we be judged as a nation, right? But that individual judgment, you're going to have to face that yourself. When we talk about judgment, even if you just want to narrow it down to the repercussions of your individual actions, you have to face that on your own. And so our people need to begin to, as they have studied the bloodline well and have got into law and have done all of these things, they need to begin to start studying the higher spiritual matters that concern the Moor, so that we can really have unity and love and peace on earth and enjoy this nationality, enjoy this divine creed, instead of always being at odds with one another and arguing with one another.
Right.
We should enjoy what we have been brought and prospering with it and doing great things and showing the world that we are scientific and that we're high culture, that we're of a high nature. And we're just not cutting it.
Absolutely, Mo. And when I tell people in that, like you said, that whole conversation about man and women, we've made the gender aspect, even if you listen to a lot of or read a lot of the more spiritual writings in context of the gender, we've made it more about the identity now in our lower self. In other words, there's this whole confusion about identity and gender.
Yes.
You feel what I'm saying? And then the context of what is attached to that identity as opposed to quality of nature. Because we know what a feminine nature is and we know what a masculine nature is, and there's balance within that. But when you take it into an identity of, I'm an alpha male, or I'm the matriarch, what I'm saying? And, now it's ego involved where one is trying to rule the other instead of balancement. And I think that's where we've definitely been lost. So I definitely feel you on that. Absolutely.
If I add one thing, even on the earthly level, it's only important, you go through that yin yang phase, but once you have a child, that should bring the balance. And that's the problem. It doesn't bring the balance. You have still people trying to, well, now it's not about you or you, it's about the child.
Right.
You should both be more focused on that than you are on each other. And so that's what brings that balance. Matter of fact, it forms a pyramid, a scale that brings balance. And so it's really only important, gender is really only important for us bringing in the new star child, and then what principles are they going to get, right?
Exactly.
And that has to have a balanced approach. And so, again, that's where knowing the self comes in.
True. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And so to add on to transition with what you're doing, in terms of the teachings of the Prophet and what you're continuing to do with your works, I know that you're now, as you mentioned, in the beautiful island of Hawaii. And I want you to kind of just, without giving too much, if, as much as you wish to divulge about the Moorish retreat, and just in terms of like, what is your vision right now at the stage of what you're doing right now?
Islam. Well, the Aloha Moorish retreat is started by a brother named my Reese Banny Baby's online.
It's not.
You can post in the pictures, beautiful pictures from the island, beautiful birds, reptiles, and like little what do they call them, butterflies, and all kind of different things, And so, as he's an elder in our community, I've known him for at least probably 20, 30 years. And as Moors, growing up, we were taught to be active and not passive.
Yes.
And so always kind of try to keep businesses and trade posts and things in the community so that Moors can see themselves. So when a Moor wake up and become conscious, he can say, oh, that's my shop over there. Let me go eat over there. And just like the Jews do, or the Italians, or anybody else. Let's have these businesses where we can support ourselves. And we have a track record of doing that for at least a decade now, So when our brother laid out the beautiful retreat and offered the opportunity for Moor to become a part of it, I said, hey, this is an opportunity we've been dealing with these inner city and these businesses and being in the inner city. It's an opportunity to expand into the Moorish village life,
Yes.
It's a movement right now. It's a movement right now amongst our people. You'll see, I believe it was Ben X, I believe they have the Hereafter homes.
Yes.
And they're building the cabin style home, tiny home type thing. Similar to Allensworth. If you ever over in California where we have our convention annually, there's an old so-called black town, first so-called black town, only so-called black town founded in California. And it truly so-called black is Allensworth. And when you go, it's a museum now, and you go and you see, all right, it's a building here, it's a building here. Like the town doesn't necessarily have to be a super big thing,
Yeah.
With the rise of alternative types of buildings, earthback homes, tiny homes, mobile tiny homes, and it afforded an opportunity to begin to help develop that idea of a retreat out here for all, but also that Moorish Americans can enjoy land that Moors, when they walk on it, it's their land. They're actually stepping into Moorish land, not just talking about some sovereignty and these things, but actually we have to move to the level of village and town and community, even ultimately cities and states. We have this structure and we know it already exists. Well, now let's go ahead and superimpose it upon the land and actually have it where we can look around and we can see our own school, we can see our own temple, our own whatever it is that we're trying to do.
Yes.
So we decided that, hey, we've given a lot of time and opportunity into the cities. Yes. And if we're ever going to have anything of our own, we need to begin to expand into our own land jurisdiction. And so the brother offered me the opportunity to become a part of it, and I took it. And so we made a plan to come here for 6 months and to help develop the land with excavations and some type of surgical excavations where we're removing just the dead stuff and we're leaving the sacred ohia trees and the guava trees and things that are on the land and in line with our indigenous ways.
Yes.
But also helping to build retreat homes so that when people come and they visit the land, that there's lodging for them and maybe even food, so on and so forth, which will eventually expand into tours across the island and seeing important aspects of not only Hawaiian culture, but ancient Moorish culture, because it's very deep here. The land is here. The land is spacious. There's nothing stopping anyone from curating the land, and speaking about the cultural traditions that we're connected with. And so this is some of the vision of what it's about. We're working here, but we're also working in other areas. We have some of our brothers in Los Angeles have begun to get into the land and are forming branch and programs for those that are in need.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the vision. Also, there's an agricultural aspect to it, you know, being able to farm on the land
Right.
in agricultural zones. And so being able to build these tiny homes, build self-sustainable communities, compostable toilets, solar power, water catchment system, and also generators and backups and so on and so forth. These are the nation building skills that our people are going to need to be able to get out of the cities, come back to the land, and truly do for self.
Yes.
You know, you stay in the city and you're there, you might have for 2 months, you have a bad ending up on the street. And in Oakland, San Francisco, you have skyscrapers for living in luxury, and right down at the bottom is 10 feet. And so, you know, this is the future. The way I think is micro societies, we kind of live Americans, society, cities. We need to come out and to us, expand onto all, so that we truly breathe to be at peace, be at one, around. And so that's kind of what it is. And for those that aren't able to, they come and spend long periods of time out off the grid. I showed you some of where we were with truly off the grid.
Yes.
But they come visit for a while. They're being some of that. And these MPs, you know, they're finding that transition.
Islam. Praise Allah. Praise Allah. I want to say that when I saw what you showed me, it made my heart feel good. And I know we're going to have continued talks offline. I don't know if we had this conversation, but one of the things I did was I wrote, before I even joined the temple, I wrote a book that I just recently published called Land of the Free. And it speaks to what the whole thing that, you know, like you said, the movement of living off the grid, you know, sustainable living and things of that nature, which is very important. So, you know, and this was like back in 2012, and I was working with brothers here in North Carolina. And so to see that come back full circle, you know, just make me feel good about that. So, you know, I definitely look forward in the future, inshallah, to be out that way and, you know, and connecting with the brothers. So I know we came up over an hour, and your audio towards the end got a little choppy. So I guess that's a signal for us to kind of wrap up. But I just want to say, before we do, I wanted to give a shout out to some of the Moors, give Islam to some Moors. I see DL to Islam, honest to Cozmo and Shem, peace. Kiki Curly, straight talk, Islam. Eric Moore said Islam. Shamel, this is brother Samad El. Officer POA said Islam Moors. And he talked about, when you spoke about the 5-pointed star, he said, I have a 5-pointed blue star in my left eye. Okay, he speaks about a 5-pointed star. And Anthony Culberson says, peace, God. Sister Jean Bay said, Islam, my brother. So they're out here. They're, praise Allah. Before we conclude, any final words and thoughts from you that you want to give to the people on how they can connect with you? Again, everybody get the Cozmo L's books on Amazon. Great reads. How can people get in touch with you and communicate with you?
Islam. So again, I am here in Hawaii for probably the next five months. They can reach me at the Minister of Culture at gmail.com. That would be the easiest way. It seemed like there were a lot of Moors coming to Oakland as soon as I left. And so I want to give a shout out to the Moors who are there in Oakland, who are holding down the temple. Brother Sheikh Osiris Amaru Bey, Brother Mike Bey, Brother King Sirius Ill. I'll give a shout out also to Brother Osar and Sister Melanie, Osar Bey and Sister Melanie Bey that have come and that are aiding and assisting. We look forward to other brothers and sisters who have been saying that they're coming to Oakland to help us actually build this community. we say that all are welcome. Just bring your higher selves, brothers and sisters, because one thing we do not tolerate is a lower self demonstration out there, because it's too much at stake. So the Minister of Culture at gmail.com is the best way. Again, this book, The Higher Self, Lower Self. Please pick up this book for us. One of the things, and other books of mine. One of the things that I've done, I've recently started allowing the charity itself to accept donations. Me myself, I don't accept any donations, but what I do is I write literature for Moors, and if they support it, then some of the great works that we're doing here in Hawaii, some of the great works that we're doing in Oakland, if they can support, then most of my wealth is spent on the movement. So the more that they can support, the more they can see the movement shine. And we're also looking after this to go to other territories where Moors have land that they're working on projects and take what we've learned here to help develop in other areas. So look out for us. I also want to give a shout out to the brothers in Washington, Moorish Science Temple of America, Washington, Brother Douglas Renhill out there, and Brother Powell Bay, that are demonstrating and being about the upliftment of fallen humanity. So, also, I can't forget Shahid Ali Hill and the Moors in Los Angeles, who are doing an excellent job, and all those on the Khalifa Council. Keep the faith, stay strong, brothers and sisters. We're in a beautiful time, and I just want to open it up for Moors to be able to support the works that we're doing right now, because as the Prophet said, we need finance and we need it badly. We're gonna be all right because Allah is leading on. But if there are those who want to connect with this great work and see it shine even more, see more families get fed, more families get housing and clothing, and see the retreat become more developed and our agricultural programs develop, then please support.
Islam, gratitude, Moor. And again, thank you, Moor, for taking time out of your day to get on platform and share your wisdom with everyone. And to everyone, thank you for participating and watching what we have, and we'll be coming with more. Gratitude, Moor. I can't thank you enough, Brother Cozmo. We're going to be in touch. Right now, we're about to end this live stream. So to everyone here, peace and love.